Greetings everyone, this is Ohio Dan. Today's video topic is most voters are useful idiots. Now, I'm just going to say up front, I'm mostly going to focus on people that tend to vote for leftist political parties and leftist policies. I'm not saying that there aren't idiots that vote for Trump. I'm not saying that there aren't idiots all the way around that vote for all kinds of different candidates. But I am going to mostly focus on the political left. So if that's not your cup of tea because you don't have political opinions one way or the other, I am going to try to talk about both sides, but I'm going to be particularly hard on leftists in this video. So one thing to keep in mind when you're evaluating modern politics, probably in any Western country, but definitely in the United States, is that most people, particularly on the left, are just useful idiots to the overall machinations of the political agenda that is intended to increase the size and scope of government. There are people on the right who will support these socially conservative policies that also increase the size of government. The war on drugs, for example, especially at the local level, really caused police, law enforcement to focus on drugs, probably more than what was actually helpful to society, arguably. But there are conservative policies like that, especially social policies, that increase the size and scope of government. But especially today, it is mostly the modern political left that is the vehicle to accomplish this. It is just about increasing the power of the state at everyone else's expense and having useful idiots that vote for these kinds of policies and that co-sign this phenomenon pretty much. This can be true for people on the right in some cases, but the gulf between the supposed interests and the actual goals of those on the political left is incredibly wide. In other words, leftists don't really care about women. Leftists don't really care about LGBTQ. They don't care about illegal immigrants and have this compassion just for the sake of basically believing that they should be able to have open borders and just come and settle here. They don't care about Islam and Christianity and atheism or religion in general. They care about how can we milk this situation in this particular group of people in order to get them to vote for bigger government, to get them to vote their own rights away. Feminism is a clear example of this. You need to go to work because that's empowering. That way we can cut wages in half and make more money. You need to essentially kick men out of the home. That way we can take your kids, educate them the way that we want, basically disseminate revisionist history and convince them that their country in the past has been evil, for example. And so now, in order to atone for that, they need to join our cause. When all of it is really just about indoctrinating people and convincing them not to stand up for whether it's their heritage, their property, the ability to have control over your own life in terms of the choices that you make. The establishment, those that control both the political apparatus and most corporations, they're two sides to the same coin. That's a political red pill that I'll probably talk about in a future video if I haven't already talked about it. Corporations and the state are two sides of the same coin. They're both controlled mostly by the elites, the ruling class, and they want to use these different groups of people to justify taking other people's rights away so that they then have precedent for taking everyone's rights away. It's really that simple and straightforward. It's not about any of these particular groups of people and their causes in the long run. It is about control and power and increasing the size and scope of government in particular. Again, corporations and businesses collude with this. The wealthy elites are basically in control of both of those elements of society at the same time. There are plenty of useful idiots in government as well, don't get me wrong. You have your AOCs who probably believe that socialism is the way to improve the world. They probably believe that Marxism is good. But in reality, it doesn't work because it's not compatible with human nature, as I've talked about previously. And so what ends up happening is these people just slowly, through their policies, increase the power of the state. You could see this with the pandemic, right? Somehow it makes sense that you have to get this injection or you're a bad person, even though all these other people can also get the injection and protect themselves. You still need to protect them anyway somehow. And we're going to convince people that that's what they need to do because, one, it makes the pharmaceutical companies more money, and two, it allows them to give away their bodily autonomy, which is another major right that you should have. Somehow, when it comes to women's rights, that's an issue, but when it comes to experimental pharmaceutical products, it's not. So all these things tell me that it's not about the actual causes. It's not about belief in a sincere way in the movements that are part of the umbrella of the political left. It is about how can we increase the size and scope of government. So essentially, Marxist tactics are being used to create these victim and oppressor groups based on whatever will get people to vote for more government power. And the political left has become the primary vehicle for that. Again, just to be fair, you have a lot of people that voted for Trump that thought that he was going to be the peace candidate and we wouldn't be in any wars because Trump was an America First politician, or not even a politician, but someone that just came into politics. And how many conflicts have we been in here recently? You know, what's going on in Iran? What are we doing with Israel and Palestine? Right? Are we not getting involved in wars? Now, you could say that it could have been worse with Harris, with Russia and Ukraine. But the point is, even that doesn't seem to be genuine. Even that involves voters being useful idiots to a large extent, thinking that things would really be different. I talked about this in my controlled opposition video. I don't think things are going to be a whole lot different. It's just the lesser of two evils and which choice is worse than the other. Or, better yet, there are no political solutions to our problems. Things are going to sort out however they're going to sort out. To me, that's the conclusion that I've drawn over the last few years at least. But getting back to the main point, with useful idiots being the majority of voters, honestly, in Western countries, the process of determining which groups of people are needing support from the government and need help from the state at some level, it doesn't have anything to do with actually helping people in these groups. Only about what is politically expedient to give more power to the ruling class while convincing everyone else to vote their rights away. In other words, for example, the LGBTQ movement. I don't know how many people that have been part of that movement in the past see this now and reject the movement as it is today. My understanding is there's a growing undercurrent of people that see things this way, but it's clear now that the modern phases of this movement, at least since the early 2000s or so on, were not about helping LGBTQ people integrate with society in a positive way. It was about basically making these people addicted to this specific identity so that when anybody else is portrayed as attacking your group of people, they need to be dealt with. We can't have people that don't acknowledge some third non-existent gender. We need to find them. You see this in Canada today, from my understanding, at least in certain provinces. I don't know how much this is enforced, but you can be fined for misgendering someone with some third non-existent gender. You can have these women that compete against men in sports and talk about how awful it is, but then people are taught, just vote for the right people, or just essentially don't do anything about it because that's just the way things are today. It's a matter of manipulating the scenario at hand so that you can take control in a way that is perverse and corrupt and that allows the ruling class to basically farm the population. That, to me, is where all of this is headed. We're going to punish you for not baking a wedding cake for a gay couple. We're going to punish religious institutions for not endorsing LGBTQ because even though it contradicts their religion, their scripture, their whatever the written word happens to be, their overall foundation, we're going to punish them if they don't go along with this and perform ceremonies to marry a gay couple. We're not going to allow them to say no to that. the whole point is to continue to take away any sort of remaining threat, any sort of remaining power that would stand in the way of basically moving on from a democratic form of government or a Republican form of government, small r Republican. That's the whole goal of these policies. It's not about LGBTQ. There's not any sort of standard for actually helping a gay person just be the best individual they can be. Because if you really wanted to help them out, that's what you would do. You would not get them addicted to this sense of group identity and pride in that identity, especially if it's not a choice anyway. Why should you have pride in something and then claim that it wasn't a choice to be that way? That doesn't make any sense. But yet, that's where this has gone, because the whole point was to then be able to manipulate not just LGBTQ people, I'm not trying to pick on them, but women through feminism, BLM, and African American communities. All of this has been about, let's take control over this with the Marxist narrative. Say that they're the victim class, get them to vote for us, and then we'll take the rights away of the oppressors. And you see this with the racial policies, women getting all these benefits, getting all this special treatment, not getting punished for the awful things that they can do, because people in general can do awful things. That has been something that has been used, because if women will vote for men to not be able to lead families anymore and not be able to lead their communities anymore, especially masculine men that could stand in the way of essentially tyranny, if you can remove that obstacle and just get women to be in charge, women can be manipulated so much more easily. They'll vote their rights away in order to be provided for. They'll just choose the state as their new husband. And the powers that be know this. So the whole point of feminism, from the state's perspective, from the perspective of the ruling class, has been to use this as a way to basically tear down families, tear down communities, and take control over everything. And so it has nothing to do with the causes of these particular groups, and everything to do with how these groups can be used to accomplish political ends that are not in the interest of anybody, beyond the people that already control most of the wealth and the resources, the flow of information, the education system, etc. It is a divide and conquer strategy that uses identity politics to move toward a totalitarian state. That, in my opinion, is especially the political left, but again, the right to a large extent is just controlled opposition so that people think that they have an alternative, in my opinion, when in reality, someone like Trump may at best slow down the deterioration and the eventual collapse of society. I don't think they're going to be successful, right? That's where I disagree with a lot of the people that agree with a lot of what I'm saying about manipulating events so that power can be taken away from the common people. But I disagree that it's going to work. I think it's all going to implode, and it's just going to lead to the collapse of Western society. But regardless of the ultimate outcome, most voters, especially on the left, quite a few on the right as well, to be fair, are just useful idiots. They are not computing anything. They just believe what the media tells them to believe. They get caught up in their particular causes and the things they believe in without realizing that those causes have largely been co-opted in order to accomplish the goals of the ruling class at everybody else's expense. If they can come after people based on their gender, men, if you can come after white people, if you can come after Christians, and I'm not saying it's always this simple, but when it's okay to tear down these kinds of people, those that believe in traditional relationships, even though I don't believe that that's a viable path anymore to a large extent, versus LGBTQ, in other words, for people that simply believe that someone with a Y chromosome is a man and someone that lacks a Y chromosome is a woman, those people have to be demonized, because essentially you can now take advantage of the other groups of people that see themselves as victims, when really they're the people that are in the more mentally and emotionally compromised position. They're the people that are struggling to understand themselves and understand the world. And if you can vilify the people that could stand in the way of tyranny, and you can create this victim group that will allow you to erode away the rights of the people, then that's what they're going to do. And these useful idiots believe that it's actually about women's rights, or that it's actually about somehow now reversing everything that's been done and has damaged society for centuries regarding racial differences, or that somehow LGBTQ needs to be normalized now and that that's going to be a positive thing. It's not about those causes. It's not about illegal immigration. It's just about being able to use these events, these movements, in a way that is strategic so that you can erode away things like the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, I believe it's called, in Canada, etc., so that you can now have an excuse to punish people for not doing what the state, what corporations, and what the ruling class wants you to do. So because so many people are acting against their own self-interest in terms of the way that they vote and the way that they see politics, it is often best not to take their political statements seriously. Again, I don't think there is a political solution to our problems as long as most of your normies think that these are the core issues that I've mentioned here. Unless someone demonstrates a more comprehensive understanding of why they believe what they believe, and then you can have an agreement or a disagreement on that basis, you can pretty much assume they're a useful idiot. And again, this does include people that are diehard Trump supporters that think that he's going to save the country, but mostly it's the left, if I'm being honest. I really believe that the left is far more anti-reality than the right is, or at least there's more room for reality on the right than there is the left today, even though you've got delusional people everywhere. But that's my personal take on it. But the political class, especially those that support the Democratic Party, and even some of the Republican elites, I'm sure are really not a whole lot better, but they're all colluding in the sense that they want these particular groups to be the gateway for taking everyone's rights away. And I just don't see this put out there that often. Maybe these types of videos tend to get taken down. I don't know. I hope not. But this is my take on the way that most voters are making decisions. They have no idea what's going on. There's very little reason to converse with them. This is more true on the left, but it can be true with certain people on the right as well. But ultimately, as long as this is your average voter, there's still not much hope for solving anything from a political or policy standpoint, because these useful idiots will just get manipulated every time into thinking things are going to be different, that things are going to get better. And it's just not going to happen because the system itself is pretty corrupt. The system itself, in my opinion, is probably not salvageable in the United States and other Western countries. And again, especially if they could continue to manipulate these groups of people into these essentially Marxist causes, thinking that they're the victim group and that the oppressors need to be punished and just take their rights away and everything will get better. As long as that seems to be the mindset, especially on the left, things are not going to get better. There's not going to be a political resolution to this. Things will just continue to fall apart. Don't even argue with people that think along these lines. Focus on yourself and the things that matter in your own life, because this is the state of affairs, in my opinion, and I don't think it's going to get a whole lot better with your average voter's decision-making power and capabilities today.